Washington responded to soaring gasoline prices by including a Renewable Fuels Standard, or RFS, in the 2005 energy bill. The RFS established an ethanol production mandate requiring 4 billion gallons of the renewable fuel be blended with gasoline in 2006.
We are the United States of America.
1 year later, then Senator Barack Obama declared his candidacy for president. And like George W. Bush, the Illinois Democrat praised homegrown alternative fuels like ethanol and called on Congress to approve a new, higher renewable fuel standard. And that's exactly what lawmakers did, increasing the ethanol blending mandate to 36 billion gallons annually by 2022. Since corn is the dominant feedstock of U.S. ethanol, the expansion also fueled a classic bull market. Corn futures prices, which had fallen below $2 in 2005, soared to a then-record high of $7.54 per bushel during the summer of 2008. But almost as quickly as it began, the renewable fuels boom encountered strident opposition from critics who blamed ethanol for everything from higher food prices to deforestation in developing nations. And in recent days, ethanol supporters defended themselves again in the court of public opinion. The Associated Press published a series of stories this week, in print and in video, criticizing the Obama administration's support of ethanol and the Renewable Fuels Standard. Ethanol advocacy groups said the AP simply ignored the facts in favor of its predetermined narrative, and characterized the reports as lazy journalism that was littered with misinformation and inaccuracies. AP's senior managing editor stood behind the reporting, saying it was the result of months of work that included interviews of experts and people on all sides of the public policy debate about this energy resource.
Most people don't think about what goes into their tanks other than the price. But every pump of gas comes with a not-so-hidden cost.
Someday you're going to be using this in your cars.
What President George Bush signed into law, the Obama administration has since championed. Oil companies required to add billions of gallons of ethanol to their gasoline each year. Most of that is corn, which is distilled into ethanol. But the promise of a greener, cleaner fuel has proven far more damaging to the environment than the government is saying.
There's no question that air quality, water quality is benefiting from this industry. And we're reducing our reliance on foreign oil, as everyone knows.
Despite numerous criticisms from reporters and environmental watchdogs, that soundbite from Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack represented the only positive comment about ethanol included in a video report the Associated Press called "The Secret Dirty Cost of Obama's Green Power Push." And the AP followed up Vilsack with this.
Under President Obama's watch, 5 million acres of land specifically set aside for conservation have been converted to cropland. That's an area the size of Yellowstone, the Everglades, and Yosemite National Park combined.
In a meeting with the editorial staff of the Des Moines Register last week, Vilsack bristled at the mere mention of the AP story, saying it contained a number of errors and inaccuracies. And the secretary insisted that conservation acreage is, in fact, at an all-time high.
Let's talk about the suggestion that we have 5 million fewer acres in conservation than when I became secretary. That is not true. It is true that we have fewer acres in CRP, but we have more acres in CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, more acres in EQIP, acres in the Wetland Reserve Program, wetlands in the Wildlife Habitat Incentive Program, all the other conservation programs. So I can confidently say that over 500,000 producers are engaged in conservation practices of one form or another on a record number of acres, in excess of 350 million acres. We will add another 24 million acres to that number in this year, so we will be up to 370 million acres or so. So it's inaccurate to suggest that because one program has declined, that all of conservation has declined. It has not.
But the Associated Press wasn't finished.
I can make a lot more money with corn and beans.
That's a dilemma for farmers like Leroy Perkins. The money the government pays to keep his 91 acres unfarmed as part of a conservation program is now less than what he can get for corn.
What's going to happen to the land? It could disappear.
In retrospect this week, Corydon, Iowa farmer Leroy Perkins told the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association that he's a big believer in ethanol, and he's disappointed that what he told AP reporters seemed to be twisted to satisfy an agenda.
Not once was I led to believe they were going to do a wham bang on ethanol. They mentioned the ethanol. There's two sides to every story, and that ethanol story has got a side, but there's another side to it too.
The evidence is in the ground. In 2012, American farmers planted 15 million more acres of corn farmland than before the boom.
The price of corn at $8 a bushel, a lot of producers decided to take land which had been in CRP out of CRP and put it back into production. Now, corn is now $4.50, $4.20. It'll be interesting to see what happens the next time we have a general sign-up. So it's a factor of the economy.
This color-coded map based on U.S. Department of Agriculture data shows the dramatic conversion in the past 5 years. The darker the area, the higher percent of corn plantation.
It's becoming more common because of how profitable corn is to do corn on corn on corn instead of rotations.
Gullies shaped like fingers show the effect of planting on marginal land. Craig Cox of the Environmental Working Group, normally an Obama ally, calls the ethanol policy an ecological disaster.
So you can imagine, this spring, April, May, there's nothing covering the soil. You get a heavy rainstorm, and the soil erosion and polluted runoff from fields like this is horrendous.
Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Bill Northey disagrees that increased corn acreage automatically results in soil erosion and polluted runoff. Northey, who farms 600 acres in the northwest corner of the Hawkeye State, also criticized the Associated Press reports. And he says farmers in Iowa, the nation's top corn and ethanol-producing state, are going to great lengths to minimize erosion and control runoff from their fields.
Farmers are working hard at it. We've done it for a long time around erosion, and you look at terraces and grass waterways and filter strips that folks have put in. Now we're increasingly looking at water quality and trying to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus as well. Some of those same practices work, but it requires other practices to do some things. We're seeing increased amounts of cover crops that are out there. We're looking at biofilters and nutrient reduction wetlands that are out there as well. So lots of different practices that in some cases farmers weren't using 10 years ago, now are. They're increasingly interested in them, and so we see a lot of effort and engagement around both water quality and erosion reduction.
That runoff, according to Des Moines Water Works, is ending up in the two rivers that supply 500,000 customers. For the first time, the city had to run huge machines around the clock this summer to filter out the rising levels of harmful nitrates. Scientists say those same pollutants containing nitrogen and phosphorus are traveling all the way down to the mouth of the Mississippi River and beyond, worsening an area known as the dead zone, where marine life can't survive. This year's dead zone stretched more than 5,800 square miles. That's roughly the size of Connecticut.
It's not rocket science to figure out if you plant more acreage in corn, you use more fertilizer, we lose more fertilizer. That means more of it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. We have larger algal blooms and then larger dead zones.
Runoff from farmland, especially in Iowa, has long been blamed for its contribution to the dead zone. And the Associated Press was correct when it reported the Des Moines Water Works operated its nitrate removal facility for a record period this past summer. But RFS proponents dispute the suggestion that increased corn acreage means more fertilizer and more nitrates in the Gulf of Mexico. According to the Renewable Fuels Association, nitrogen use actually declined from the inception of the Renewable Fuels Standard in 2007 through 2010, the most recent year for which Agriculture Department data is available. The RFA maintains the amount of nitrogen required to produce a bushel of corn has fallen steadily over the past 30 years, dropping 43% per bushel since 1980. RFA President Bob Dineen told Market to Market this week he was frustrated by what he called an utter lack of balance in the AP report. Deneen questioned the timing of the AP coverage, with EPA's ethanol blending announcement looming on the horizon, and said he and other proponents will continue to advocate for what he calls America's most successful renewable fuel.
I believe that the Renewable Fuels Standard has been a tremendous success. I believe it is necessary for our nation's economic and energy future, and I, the domestic ethanol industry, and farmers across this country are going to fight to make sure that this important policy remains in place.
On Friday, however, the Obama administration proposed reducing the amount of ethanol in America's fuel supply next year by nearly 3 billion gallons. And when Market to Market asked Deneen what his response would be if that were to happen, he vowed to fight harder than ever before.
We will certainly be commenting to EPA. We'll be encouraging others to let the administration know the mistake that they are pursuing, and hopefully, before this rule is finalized, changes are made that reflect the potential of domestic renewable fuels to continue to grow and evolve, lower consumer costs, lower our dependence on imported oil, and finally address global climate change. If not, if they finalize a rule that rolls back the RFS, the only successful energy policy this nation has in place today, we will challenge it in every venue we possibly can, including the courts.
Next week, Market to Market will examine the impact of the Obama administration's proposal to roll back the RFS and consider its effect on prices from the pit to the pump. For Market to Market, I'm John Nichols.